everybody. First take on a Wednesday. Stephen A. Smith in the house. Max Kellerman. I'm Molly Karam. Hi, guys.
What's going on?
Halfway through the week, gentlemen. Not that we're counting. Always having fun here. And guess who else is joining us? Usher. Yeah. We have the new stars of the film Hands of Stone. That's in theaters this Friday. Usher and Edgar Ramirez will be joining us, so stay tuned for that. But, gentlemen...
Usher's a special individual. You do know that, right?
I do. I've seen him in concert.
She has the same birthday.
Oh, as you?
It's your boy.
Oh, so it's about you. Oh, yeah.
And you know what?
Now I think of him differently.
What about me? Yeah. What about me?
You guys ready to work?
Yes, always.
All right, let's do this. You knew there couldn't be a Josh Norman interview without the Odell Beckham Jr. question. Courtesy of ESPN, the magazine, this piece is also in newsstands Friday. So Norman spoke on the contentious matchup in Week 15. We all remember this last season, where Beckham was charged with 3 personal fouls, saying, "Everybody saw what he was. People from around the league were coming up to me afterward and saying, he does that crap all the time. He lost so much respect from people from that little tantrum. I've already got a couple people telling me, okay, I've got a hit out on him. It's going to be a rough for him this year, and he brought it on himself." Stephen A. Norman, friend of the show. Is he going too far?
He's absolutely going too far. And I think that Josh Norman's got to calm down because of some of the things that, you know, he says. We all know how panicky the league is in this day and age. I know that Josh Norman's a good brother. I know that his heart's in the right place. He's got a mouth on him, but that has served him well, and he shouldn't be condemned for that. We get all of that because when you come from Coastal Carolina and you work your way up to the ranks where you're being recognized one of the premier corners in the game, clearly he knows what's working for him, and the mouth is a part of it. Fair enough. But the flip side to it all is that when you say things like, you know, a hit out on a play and things of that nature, you know that the league is going to get its antennas up. That's just not smart. That's just not a smart thing to say. That's just not a smart thing to do. And for anybody that would try to dismiss it, understand that's not going to fly because the NFL is not going to dismiss it. The NFL is going to keep a keen eye on things. When you go up against the New York Giants, the game could potentially be called tight. You see how many defensive players complain about the NFL all the time. This is what happens. They're saying you can't, you got bad breath. They'll call you for a penalty against these guys on offense in this day and age, especially one of the premier players in the league. And so when you got Odell Beckham Jr., who's an absolute stud and a star on the rise to superstar status, when he goes up against Josh Norman, chances are he's going to get a lot of calls. If he keeps his head and he keeps his cool, chances are the league rules facilitate alone that he may end up getting the better of Josh Norman because Josh Norman may get penalized a whole bunch. You just never know. When you open your mouth, you put yourself in that kind of precarious situation, and Josh Norman is smarter than that. And you have to be smarter than that. For him to sit up there and to call out Odell Beckham Jr. that way, you're just inviting a significantly heightened level of eyeballs and cynicism aimed in your direction. It's counterproductive to you. It's counterproductive to the Washington Redskins. It's counterproductive to all parties involved on your side because, again, the rules are stacked against you alone. So you got to know this kind of stuff, and you got to guard against it. And I don't think he's doing that at all. I think that he's been opening his mouth entirely too much since he's arrived in the nation's capital with his 5-year, $75 million contract and $50 million guaranteed. He's going to tell you, I'm after it. I got to go get it. And he's definitely dedicated to it. He's going to put in the work. He's going to be on his grind. I definitely believe he's going to be one of the best in the game. But you have to be cognizant of the kind of position that you're putting yourself in, because there are uncontrollable situations that exist in the sport of professional football. And when you're not sensitive enough to that and you don't guard against that, you can put yourself and your team in a precarious situation. And it's just unfortunate to listen to Josh Norman talk so much about this kind of stuff because he doesn't realize what he's doing. I hope he's ready, because he had better be ready, considering how much talking he's been doing.
Let me tell you what I think is going on here. Josh Norman, when he hooked up with Odell Beckham last year, and Odell, the most receiving yards in the history of the NFL through his first 2 seasons. Odell, when they did a survey of the most famous athletes in the world, the most famous football player worldwide was Peyton Manning at the time. The second was Odell Beckham. Odell was this young, as you mentioned, stud superstar receiver, and Josh Norman was able to get under his skin the first game when they first linked up. He got under his skin, and it resulted not only in Odell losing his cool and getting himself into trouble, But also, I think maybe even Odell dropping a couple passes where he burnt Norman. He was open. And the ball was in his hands, and a guy who, other than those two passes, never dropped a pass in his NFL career, suddenly drops a pass. So I think he did get under his skin, but I think what's happened is Odell has returned the favor right now. I think Odell Beckham has pointed out that the reason people were talking about Josh Norman is because of Odell Beckham. And here it looks to me like Josh Norman's trying to disprove that theory by talking about a whole lot of stuff that's not Odell Beckham. Now, of course, he's going to be asked about Odell, and I agree with you, Stephen. I thought he spoke irresponsibly about it, maybe getting himself into a little trouble there. He adds Demaryius to who he's talking about.
Which we will get into later.
We're going to get into it. He adds the commissioner.
Which we will get into.
I mean, like
he's talked about everybody.
He's talked, but Odell has succeeded, it seems to me, in getting under Josh Norman's skin now in the offseason, at least. In the preseason, the way Josh Norman succeeded in getting under Odell's skin. That's what this seems like to me on many topics, but certainly on the topic of Odell, who, by the way, had he not dropped those two passes, as it was, 6 receptions, 76 yards, the game-tying TD in the fourth quarter, had he not dropped those two passes, would have been about 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think Norman is feeling a certain kind of way about that.
Well, you could say that Norman's feeling a certain kind of way about that. I don't think that's what the case is. I don't think he's feeling a certain kind of way about that. I think that he's feeling himself because he thinks of himself as the best cornerback in the world, that has a huge contract, that's overcome a lot of barriers, which he has, and should be applauded for and commended for. The flip side to it is that you've got to have the foresight to look ahead and think about the league that we're talking about here. This is the National Football League. Even though he could just be talking out of his you-know-what, when you sit up there and you say, hey, well, you know, I've spoken to plenty of guys, it's hits out on this guy, et cetera, you're clearly talking about what's transpiring on the football field. I'm simply saying that the NFL is watching it because once you go up against Odell Beckham Jr.,
Sure,
you're going to find yourself in a situation where it's going to be called tight. And when things are called tight, who does that usually work against? It works against the defender, not the offensive player who's running his routes. And we're talking about an elite receiver in Odell Beckham
that Norman
Jr.
can't do anything with
changer.
anyway.
Well,
Norman couldn't do anything with him in the first link-up.
Go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to interrupt you. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah,
so, well, you look at Odell. Clearly, he's got lightning speed. He's got mad skills. We all know this. Josh Norman's got some stuff to prove, and let's just put it out here. When I speak to NFL, I am I defer. The reason why I know so much is because I speak to the people who actually do know. It's not that I'm watching and scouting myself and saying I'm not at a football practice and I'm saying I know what I'm seeing. No, it's not just that. It's that I got this Rolodex in my phone and I pick up and I talk to Hall of Famers who played a particular position. I talk to aficionados who cover this sport for decades. I talk to coaches. I talk to GMs. I talk to these people, okay? And so what happens is they enlighten you about what's going on. When we talk about Josh Norman, I bring up the name Josh Norman, every single individual. I'm talking about all-pro, all-world Hall of Fame corners. I'm talking about all-pro, all-world Hall of Fame wide receivers. I'm talking about coaches. I'm talking about scouts. Every single individual that I've spoken to about Josh Norman has said this. He's very gifted. He works his tail off. He deserves credit. However, he's not the fastest corner in the world, A, and B, he's limited with what he can do. Now, to Josh Norman's credit, when he and I have spoken, he emphatically debunks that, says guys ain't watching film. There's been plenty of times he was in one-on-one situations, not just benefiting from a zone scheme. He always says that. But they say, look, he has limitations. He can't cover the quicker receivers. He can't cover dudes in the slot. This is what they say about him. So if this is true, what you have is a situation where Josh Norman is coming into this season anxious to prove himself. Deshaun Jackson sits there, talks with me about Josh Norman. He said, look, man, this dude goes after it. He said, we in practice, I get the better of him. He's sitting there like, where you going? We got work to do. He's mad that the coaches are stopping practice and giving us the rest of the day off. He wants to stay out there and work his tail off. He goes after it, and it's making us better. This is what Deshaun Jackson said about Josh Norman. So what does that mean? That means he's willing to work hard. He's willing to do what he's supposed to do. The problem is, here's what ultimately could be Josh Norman's doom. If you talk too much and bring too much attention to yourself. You may bring the wrong kind of attention, because if there's anybody that can stop him, it's officiating. And if officials get in your way because they're calling the game too tight and not letting you go out there and play mano a mano up against that dude that you want to go against, Josh Norman will lose it, because, look, that's not what he wants to do.
Well, one of the things that makes him such an excellent player, he's actually one of my favorites to watch, even though he plays for a team I root against,
big time.
Giants fan, is his competitiveness. You think of like a guy like Cortland Finnegan, who's known for like getting into fights a lot, but one of the things that made him effective was Cortland Finnegan was so competitive, and this guy's like a more talented version of that. But now he's got to live up to a $75 million contract, and one of the reasons he got paid is not only due to his excellence, but due to scarcity at the position. You know, go find shutdown corners. Now, I'm not saying he is one, but elite corners, there aren't that many by definition. But just because you're the best at your position, or one of the 2 or 3 best, doesn't mean you're Deion Sanders or Champ Bailey or Darrelle Revis in his prime. There are levels. So you can be a level or 2 below that and still be among the best at your position, and therefore get paid that way, and then have all this pressure on you to defend in this day and age, where, as you mentioned, you don't want officiating going against you. The rules are all favoring the receivers, and you got some killer receivers in your division.
Last point.
Yeah.
Number 1, speed, change of direction are considered his 2 biggest impediments. His ability to change directions as a corner. But number 2, and more importantly, in terms of his mouth, there's somebody else on the Redskins who used to talk an awful lot.
Yes.
D'Angelo Hall. You know, now, you might get that from him a little bit, because D'Angelo Hall was an elite trash talker. Backed it up a lot of times to be respected. But when we were at Washington's training camp in Richmond, Virginia, even though he's straight up, because he's as real as it gets, I'm talking about D'Angelo Hall, he was still somebody that clearly saw that, you know, I got to be a little bit more humble. Father Time, I still got it, but you recognize what you can and can't do anymore, and you got to be mindful of that.
I got to say, I admire a guy who will go and talk the kind of talk that Norman is talking right now.
If he backs it up.
Given the fact that he knows he's in a division with killer receivers he's going to have to see twice a year. So whether or not he backs it up, right, ultimately, if he doesn't back it up, it's bad for the team. Now he's put everybody out there and everything, and you know, is talking and not backing it up. But the fact that he's willing to talk, given the contract, given who he's going up against twice a year, Odell Beckham and Des Bryant, these guys, is, you know, the guys who can back it up, those are my favorites.
No, I get it, and I like him. He sat at this desk a couple of times, like Josh Norman. My only issue, I like the trash talking, the confidence, is when he's speaking of Odell Beckham specifically, he's saying he brought this upon himself. People are going to be coming after him. Well, it's like he's throwing stones and being a hypocrite, because he's also going to be bringing it upon himself as well when he's opening up his mouth. That was my only thing with that
the corners
particular
don't get
comment
hit like
towards
receivers.
But still, and whether it's the officiating or people trying to go after him, that type of thing. So, we're going to stay with Norman here. So since he's joined Washington, he's been outspoken about his team's name, the Redskins, very critical of the commissioner, Roger Goodell, along with taking shots at Demaryius Thomas, Odell Beckham Jr. And we can't forget he's joined Fox as an analyst during the season and didn't communicate that to some of the higher-ups. So, Stephen A., if you're Washington, how are you feeling about Norman?
I'm worried. I'm very worried if I'm the Washington Redskins. I'm saying, my God, I hope he backs this up, not just because we went and paid him $75 million over the next 5 years, guaranteeing $50 million. It's because of the attention he's bringing to the franchise, which may ultimately work against us. You have to remember that the Washington Redskins worked diligently to get itself beyond the RG3 era. Well, what was the RG3 era? The RG3 era involved a sensational rookie who, in the eyes of many, started feeling himself too much, that the Washington Redskins became, you know, RG3's Redskins. And as a result of that, they felt, or they perpetrated the narrative that his head got too big for him. And as a result, it divided the team to some degree, and we weren't able to get things back in order until we got Kirk Cousins up in the house. How accurate that is open for debate, but that was clearly a perception that RG3 had to fight himself through. He ended up in Cleveland. It's not just that Cleveland chose him. He ended up in Cleveland because nobody was knocking down RG3's door to get him to be their quarterback. Why? You know, the bottom line is that when you look at him, he's a good guy, never gets in trouble with the law, highly intelligent, okay, a stable individual. He just got caught up in the brand that was RG3 instead of RG3, the football player. the Redskins worked diligently to move beyond that. Now here comes Josh Norman. You're Josh Norman, and you're talking a lot. You're bringing that kind of attention to you. Now, I don't want to come across like I'm somebody that's getting on Josh Norman, you know, like he's so wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he needs to be concerned, because he needs to understand that his words, what comes out of his mouth, resonates to a point where it transcends him and starts affecting the other people around him. He may very well be able to handle it. He may well be able to live up to it. But the question is, what about the troops around you? You got a potential for a huge divide existing in the Washington Redskins locker room. Kirk Cousins is in a contract year. He signed a one-year offer, franchise tag, $19.95 million. Two of his wideouts, in Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, are not only in the last year of this contract, but were sitting at home in the offseason when they watched the Washington Redskins draft this kid Doxson out of TCU, who's going to be considered a stud at the receiving spot, which means that one of them could ultimately get replaced if indeed the opportunity presents itself for that to happen. Alfred Morris is gone. Matt Jones, your running back, hurt his shoulder during the preseason. As a result, what's happening there? It's going to be more of an onus on guys on the offensive side of the ball. So you're competing with them in practice. You're getting the better of somebody, or they're getting the better of you. You never know what kind of divide that can create. On the defensive side of the ball, you and Breland are considered the studs, because y'all are considered one of the top four secondary tandems in all of football. So when you look at it from that perspective, you got to show up and produce. So you've got your pressures. You've got pressure around you because of the pressure that's on those guys to produce. And I'm just saying that if everything comes together, it's butter. It's all good. But the second something goes wrong, you never know where it can fragment and fall apart. And if you're Josh Norman, you're not being sensitive enough to any of that. And that is what can lead to the Redskins disintegrating before our very eyes, which is not beyond the realm of comprehension. So I just think it's something that he should watch himself with as it pertains. And if I'm the Washington Redskins, I'm very, very concerned, because we're making news, but at the same time, we're doing a whole bunch of talking. And the eyes of scrutiny are going to elevate exponentially. And I don't know if this team is equipped to handle it. Remember, I didn't pick them to win the NFC East. I said on paper they should win it. But the reason I didn't pick them is because I accused them of being allergic to prosperity. Remember, I said that. That's my concern about the Washington Redskins.
Washington, if they feel like they spent their money wisely, should like this. But this comes down purely to whether or not he produces. And even then, what does that mean, and even then? You can be a shutdown corner, which he's not exactly. He's a different kind of corner. But even if you're a shutdown corner and do a job on a guy like Odell or Antonio Brown, or to stay in the division, Bryant, or think how many great receivers there are in the league. We were talking about it yesterday. There's DeAndre Hopkins and A.J. There's so many guys. And you could be shutting them down all afternoon, and it takes one play where you get burnt. And it's going to be, sometimes it's not even your fault exactly, but it's going to be obvious for everyone to see. And you will be the GOAT when you've drawn that. And by GOAT, I don't mean greatest of all time. I mean the bad guy, the villain, when you've drawn that kind of attention to yourself. So you have to produce. And this coming from a guy, by the way, who's joining a team now where the quarterback has come out and said, I want to be like the Spurs. This is like the Spurs signing Allen Iverson in his prime or something like that. That doesn't make sense. Now, kids, I'm going to take you back to 1977 for a second.
Oh, my God. This better be good.
Reggie Jackson is signed by the Yankees before he was known as Mr. October. And he sits at a press conference. The Yankees have just been swept in the World Series by the Big Red Machine, humiliated in 4 straight games. And Reggie holds up a bat and says, the Yankees will never be embarrassed again as long as I'm holding this in my hands. And the papers and this was, baseball was huge at the time. The Yankees were huge. Everyone went crazy, lost their minds. What are you saying about Thurman Munson, the team captain at the time? What are you saying about this team that just got to the World Series? How dare he this, and this? But he put all that pressure on himself. And in the World Series that year, he came up his first year with the Yankees and already hit 2 home runs in that World Series so far. And in Game 6, hit 3 in a row off the first pitch, off 3 different pitchers each time. The final one went to dead center field, a huge shot. And the Yankees won the World Series. Now, if...
Hold on.
Yeah?
I have to interject.
Go ahead.
Baseball is an individual sport where somebody can walk up to the plate and literally change the complexion of entire game with one swing of the bat.
And though that's not
football,
and though that's not quite the same,
it's not the same.
It's not quite the same in football, but the cornerback position in particular, you are charged with going up against those home run hitters. So as I said, you can strike out that home run hitter all day long. But if Odell Beckham or Des Bryant, or whether it's out of the, the AFC, Antonio Brown, whoever it is you're up against, burns you one time, particularly with the game on the line, you have not lived up to it. So I say all this to say the following. If I were Washington, this is usually not the way football works. If my quarterback just said, I want to be the Spurs, I don't love this, and etc. But if I'm a Washington fan and this dude comes through in the end, that's like the greatest. That's the athlete you root harder for than anyone.
I agree with that.
The one who goes out on a limb and says, against all odds, I'm going to do the impossible, and then does it, but now he's got to do it.
I agree with it, but it still doesn't make sense. And here's what I mean by that. Because there's no way on earth that Josh Norman can come. Josh Norman is going to be in Barry's defensive. He's the defensive coordinator for the Washington Redskins. He's going to put him in zone schemes a lot more often than not. Everybody's been talking about that's why Josh Norman in the Washington Redskins uniform was the perfect fit, because of the zone schemes that they employ in the nation's capital. What I'm saying to you is that a lot of that, what does that mean? That means your success is dependent on people all the time. Rarely are you in that mano-a-mano kind of situation where you and your excellence comes shining through. You're dependent on everybody else. You're covering areas as opposed to covering a man.
But in the end, in the end, there's going to be the camera on you covering another dude. Did he catch it or not?
Yeah, you could say that, but at the end of the day, again, if you've got a zone scheme, then ultimately your success is dependent on the pieces around you. Josh Norman is sounding like he's going to have an opportunity to be mano-a-mano. But here's the thing. People are going to be demanding that that's exactly what they say. When you go to when the Giants go up against the Redskins, nobody want to hear about no damn zone. We heard you. Excuse me. Where are you? We don't want to see Odell on the right and Josh Norman on the other side, or Josh Norman in the middle. Oh no. You've been talking. We want to make sure when if Odell Beckham Jr. goes to the bathroom, you should be outside the door.
Exactly.
You should be outside the door. If Odell Beckham Jr. runs across the middle, you should be there. If Odell Beckham Jr. runs to the sideline to talk,
matter of fact, why aren't you with Odell right now? Where's Odell? You should be there.
That's the point.
But beyond that, next time you think Odell is going to drop 2 passes against you, don't let him go for 2 touchdowns and 175 yards next time. Just, you can't do it. How do you go to work the next day?
All right, we'll leave it there. In L.A., today is August 24th, and it's also Kobe Day in the City of Angels. The L.A. City Council announced that today will be known as Kobe Bryant Day, the date commemorating the 2 jersey numbers he wore as a Laker, 8 and 24. Kobe played in the purple and gold for 20 seasons, winning 5 championships. But, Max, the question for you, my friend, is does he deserve a day?
You know, my first reaction to hearing it is, wait, Kobe Bryant gets a day now? But then, Tim Duncan had a day in San Antonio this year. Hakeem Olajuwon had a day after he retired in Houston. Karl Malone and John Stockton both had days in Utah. Larry Bird in his home state, Michael Jordan in his, North Carolina. There have been enough guys who've had days where if they've had them, Kobe should have one. In fact, Jeannie Buss just tweeted, Lakers owner Jeannie Buss just tweeted out moments ago, Happy Kobe Bryant Day, make 8/24 a yearly holiday. So if it was up to Jeannie Buss, this would be a recurring thing. That I don't know about. But one thing about Kobe that has gotten a little bit lost in terms of his greatness, Stephen A., you talk about Carmelo a lot and how if you're going to lose, at least lose to LeBron in the conference finals. You look back, forget about the first 3 championships, which were awesome, and with Shaq and the 2 best players in the game on the same team. The second 3 trips to the finals in consecutive years and back-to-back championships, and you went to 3 straight finals and 1 back-to-back championships. When you look at those teams, Pau Gasol was a superstar without the superstar kind of accolades all the time, but was performing at a superstar level. He was the only player on a team he could take you to the playoffs. You pair him with another star player, and they won championships. But if you look at that roster, a very young Andrew Bynum, a useful Lamar Odom, and Derek Fisher, and Pau Gasol as your second banana. Replace Kobe Bryant with some of the stars today not named LeBron James. Replace him with Carmelo Anthony on that team. Does that team in the West get out of it 3 consecutive times and win back-to-back titles? No, not a chance. Replace Kobe with Kevin Durant. Put him with Pau Gasol. Nope, they ain't going to win. Maybe they win one, but maybe they don't. Kobe's greatness obviously showed up with Shaq, but the fact that he was able to take him to 3 straight and win back-to-back with that cast around him, which was very good, but not amazing, in that NBA is amazing. And the fact that he was the one post-Jordan who tried to be exactly like Mike, tried to outdo him, didn't quite get there, but became as close as you could get to being another Michael Jordan, also deserves recognition. It doesn't stand out in the way LeBron doing a new thing, or even Steph, though he's not on that level, doing a new thing. It's not original, but to try to be an exact replica of the greatest who ever did it and basically accomplish it is amazing. What? Duncan has a day, so does Kobe.
Oh, there you go. Because I
said that off the top.
I was lost. Here's the deal.
You got to keep up.
You are hard to keep up with sometimes. I will give you that. But here's the deal.
Highly intelligent.
Yes, you are. Kobe's 4-2 against Tim Duncan. In 2009, 2010, in case you haven't remembered, Kobe beat the teams LeBron lost to in the playoffs. Let's remember that, too. We got to give respect for that as well. Let's also take this a step further in Orlando and Boston. Let's also take this a step further. I think that when you talk about Kobe deserving a day, I don't think we're telling the story in its totality. When we look at Kobe Bryant and the 5 rings, when we look at Kobe Bryant and the 7 trips to the title, we need to consider the organization he was working for. Now, in terms of of showing Kobe appreciation, the Los Angeles Lakers appear to be first class, and I'll give them credit for that. The flip side to it is that under the stewardship of Jim Buss and Jeannie Buss, they have been an unmitigated disaster for years, primarily because they can't come together. Siblings, brother and sister, essentially assigned. She runs the business operation. She's basically the boss. Jim Buss is basically overseeing basketball operations, even though she has the power to fire him and refuses to do so, okay? Because obviously she loves her daddy, and God rest the wonderful soul of Dr. Buss, and she doesn't want to disappoint her daddy because that's what her daddy dreamed of, Jim Buss running the show, and didn't necessarily want Phil to be that guy. Fair enough. But the flip side to it is that the situations that Kobe has had to deal with, a better organization doesn't allow that to happen. An organization run by the great Jerry West does not allow that to happen. I know his son is there now, and I think his son, to be quite honest with you, should be one of the dudes running basketball operations, be running it right now. With Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss should get the hell out of there. That's my personal opinion. But having said all of that, the fact that Kobe has had to deal with that is what resonates with me. Because everybody wants to look at the fact that Kobe Bryant played 66 games this year, looked poor, all right? Shot 35% from the field, 28% from three-point range, et cetera, et cetera. What they're missing is that the 2 previous years he was basically out. The year before that, he only played 35 games, and that was only after he only played 6 games the year before that due to the injury that he occurred on the penultimate game, or like the 3rd game from the end of the season in 2012, 2013, when he tore his Achilles. When you look at Kobe that year, that to me is the last real year for Kobe Bryant. That last year with Kobe Bryant, in his 17th NBA season, all right, with Father Time supposedly ticking at this door, the man averaged 27. Shot 46% from the field. Kobe Bryant was a monster. Kobe Bryant was the reason that the Los Angeles Lakers were relevant. This is the same year, Max Kellerman, because you were doing radio in L.A. at that time. This is the same year that Mike D'Antoni comes in after they fired Mike Brown after 5 games and then let Bernie Bickerstaff coach 5 games when they really should have let Bernie Bickerstaff coach the rest of the year.
He did pretty well.
Because he did pretty damn good. They bring in Mike D'Antoni after screwing over Phil, telling Phil, you know, we need Monday for you to make a decision, and then backdooring him at midnight on a Sunday and gave the job to Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni comes in there, and before this dude has a chance to pass gas or literally go to the bathroom, Mike D'Antoni decides that I'm going to bench a 2-time champion in Pau Gasol.
And by the way, Kobe Bryant staged a mutiny essentially behind the scenes.
I understand that.
Took over that team and played him into the playoffs.
I got it, but what I'm saying to you is all of these things are the things that he had to deal with. Okay, so when you talk about Kobe Bryant Day, it ain't just the 5 rings. It's the fact that 2 of them came after he did it without Shaq, because that's what he wanted to prove. When you talk about the 5 rings and what he accomplished, let's also understand who he was working for when he accomplished it. When you talk about the 5 rings, think about the stuff that he had to endure. Think about what his game entailed. Think about how other teams were being elevated at that particular juncture. Think about all the odds that he had stacked against him. And as far as I'm concerned, the one thing we haven't thought enough about when we think about Kobe Bryant, because he certainly does deserve a day in L.A. You know what we should be thinking about? Why the hell hasn't Chicago had a day for Michael Jordan? Because Michael Jordan, considering what he brought to the table for the Chicago Bulls organization, for the NBA, you literally had Pat Riley and others saying that every team should come together and literally throw in $1 million or whatever to pay Michael Jordan for what he did for the league. And Jerry Reinsdorf and those crew in Chicago couldn't even have a Chicago Michael Jordan day.
Quickly about Kobe, I think it's difficult to make the argument on the one hand that he had to put up with all this stuff and on the other look at this great Lakers franchise, because Dr. Buss was around for the second three-peat. They were still intact. After the late great Dr. Jerry Buss, greatest owner in the history of American team sports by far as I'm concerned, passed, then everything fell apart. But even in his decline, when they gave Kobe that contract extension, if you want to point to the problem with the Lakers, that was the day it really fell apart.
What?
Because Kobe was coming off...
What day would it really fall apart?
When they gave Kobe his contract extension.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
You think that's the day it fell apart?
Of course.
So you don't think the day it fell apart was when they decided to let Jim Buss run basketball operations?
Well, that's a separate point.
Hold on, it's not separate. It's not separate.
Yes.
No, it's not. It's
Why?
not
Because
separate
Jim
at
Buss
all.
gave him the
Because
contract.
Jim Buss is a joke. That's why.
Jim Buss gave him the contract.
Let me tell you something. Jim Buss is a joke, okay?
Even
and by the way, unlike you, I have no problem being a bad guy in that regard. Okay? You're nicer than me.
You're being a bad guy by going after Jim Buss? I'm going after Kobe.
Jim Buss is a joke.
Okay, hold on.
He has but that was the day that the Lakers have started going down.
Kobe Bryant was coming off a catastrophic injury. They were out of that contract. He had not shown his ability to even get back on the court. They gave him at that moment, before he showed the ability to even play again, a 2-year extension, the richest contract per year in the league. And as soon as he got back on the court, what happened? He got hurt again. He couldn't play. So while you're complaining that he couldn't play, they didn't have to extend him at the end of the deal.
You say that, but my point to you is this. You're implying that they didn't have any money to go out there and get anybody else. They did.
They made it more difficult because they gave the money to Kobe.
I'm sorry. A debate, Max. You got to let me make my point before you argue it. Let's say, oh, trust me. You put me to shame. Trust me on this. Here's the deal. Kobe Bryant, regardless of the money that the Los Angeles Lakers paid him, they had enough money at least twice to go out there and get another marquee player. They couldn't do it because you have a dysfunctional organization.
That gives Kobe Bryant a max deal when he can't play anymore. That's why they couldn't do it.
Excuse me.
That was the #1 indication of their dysfunction.
Well, listen, you could say that, but I would say to you, you're going to bet against Kobe Bryant at that time?
Look what happened.
At that time. Wait a minute. You can't say, look what happened.
Well, at the time, yes, at the time.
Listen, at the time, Kobe Bryant had never really been injured in his career.
It was an Achilles. He was 34 years old.
It doesn't matter. The bottom line is this. Kobe Bryant had never been injured in his career. He was 34 years old, fresh off of averaging 27. 27. Even if there was some level of dissipation, he was still good for 20 to 25 because he's Kobe. Well, again, you don't know that. So at this juncture, considering how he had to carry the organization on his back because they didn't know what the hell they were doing, you trying to tell me you don't pay him?
Yes.
You don't pay him?
Yes. You can't call them...
That's ridiculous.
You can't call them dysfunctional on the one hand and then point to a dysfunctional contract and say, but that's not part of the problem. That was the prime indicator.
I can, and I just did.
Well, you're wrong.
Let's get back to the question. So are you guys good with Kobe Day? I want to be clear. We're good with it. We're all good with it. Everyone
and by the way, finally,
think
about Mount
Look at you. You still can't stop.
No, because
you still can't stop.
You dribble so much. I never find the football. Look.
Go. Yeah.
You talk about Mount Rushmores in sports, Stephen A. Most of the time, it's hard to fill them up. Like the Clippers, how do you even put 4 guys on there? You can put Elton Brand on your Mount Rushmore. I mean, how do you do it? In the Lakers' case, it's all about editing. Who do you leave off? Kareem, Wilt, Magic, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor. It's impossible. And in that environment, Kobe certainly has a place on the Mount Rushmore on the greatest franchise in the history of world basketball, and obviously he deserves
You're talking about his play. I'm talking about obstacles created by his own organization.
We are going to leave it there. We all agree Kobe Day, a good thing in L.A. Hope everybody is enjoying that. Wish we were there for those festivities here. So many MMA fans were clamoring to see former UFC champion Ronda Rousey back in the octagon at the first ever UFC fight in New York City. However, according to Dana White, that might not be coming to fruition. Rousey will not fight at UFC 205 on November 12th in Madison Square Garden. Rousey hasn't fought since being knocked out by Holly Holm. That one was in November. Max, is this a bad look for Rousey?
It's not a good one. But the issue, the bad look for Rousey was when there was talk of an immediate rematch with Holly Holm. I mean, first there's an old expression in boxing, in the fight game, and this is part of the fight game, UFC, obviously, it's combat sports. If there's a knockout in the first fight, that same fighter is going to knock out the other fighter in the rematch only sooner. And the issue for Rousey, just in terms of getting back into fighting, like Mike Tyson once upon a time, like George Foreman once upon a time, Sonny Liston once upon a time, when you are the baddest on the planet, the one that everyone fears, you have the aura of invincibility, and that's stripped. Not only are other fighters now less scared of you, they're not intimidated by you, the intimidation doesn't beat them before the fight starts, but in terms of the fighter's own self-image, that changes, because they never lost professionally, and all of a sudden, they taste that. They know in a fundamental way that they didn't know before that they are beatable. If I were handling Ronda Rousey's career, and I've debated this with Dana White, because Dana wanted to see Ronda and a Holly Holm fight an immediate rematch, and I would advise against it at the time, because now obviously the title's changed hands a couple times. But I would have put Ronda Rousey in with the softest fighter I could find that I could sell the public, and I would try to do it right away, a couple months after the loss. 2-3 months later, I'd want her in against a real easy fighter. I would want her in a couple months after that, Stephen A., against a kickboxer who could give her the same look as Holly Holm, but not anyone as good as Holly Holm. And then after that second fight, I would evaluate whether she should even go right to a Holly Holm rematch. Not that she couldn't beat Holly Holm, but you have to restore the fighter's psyche. It's not just a matter that maybe she thought she was a movie star or wasn't properly prepared, just ran into the wrong woman on the wrong night or the wrong style, whatever it is. It's that you have to rebuild her belief in herself before you put her back in. And I think what's happened since then, I know she had the knee procedure, I know she has a swollen foot now, and she's not going to fight till she's ready, which is smart. But what I see happening from afar to Ronda Rousey is she is dealing with the fact that in her own estimation, her invincibility is gone. There are other ways to make money. It's a very tough sport, and it will be over a year until she's back in the ring. It's not a good look, but I don't even think it's about how it looks to everyone else. I think of how it's about how it feels to Ronda Rousey. Her confidence hasn't been restored. She hasn't fought since then. I believe this has been mishandled in Ronda Rousey's case.
It has been mishandled by Ronda Rousey. I don't know what part, if any, Dana White has played in that, or the UFC under their... I imagine they would want her to get back in the ring as soon as she possibly could. Here's my issue with it. I'm a fan of Ronda Rousey. I like her bravado. You know, Josh Norman caliber bravado, et cetera, et cetera. I get all of that. And especially, and I'm okay with it from a woman's perspective, because women don't get recognized in the world of sports as much as the men do when they're great. If you're not Serena Williams, I don't know of any woman that has the level of recognition comparable to that of most men who are superstars on their level. But what we must understand about Ronda Rousey, and what must be said, as much respect as I have for her, as great of a champion as I thought she was, and I still view her as, because one loss to me doesn't mean that, you know, you suddenly stink or whatever. Have nothing but respect for her. The problem is that I don't know if it's the loss that's affecting her as much as the impact from the outside world about the loss. You know what this is tantamount to in a crazy, odd kind of way to me? Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, yes, his skills dissipated thereafter, but when he had that incident involving the police, when he got into the situation with his wife, and all of a sudden, all of those salacious details came out about his behavior. Tiger Woods, to me, his game had disintegrated from that point forward. I don't care about the numerous tournaments he won. He didn't win a major since. Why? Because psychologically, here's what happened. I promoted myself and exploited the attention that I was getting based on this image and this facade that I had portrayed to the masses. And then all of a sudden, when the truth came out, I got exposed, and I can't deal with that. In Ronda Rousey's case, we're not talking about image. We're talking about fighting, true, because you lost in the octagon. But it's not that she lost. It's that the mystique that she had created for herself and exploited, monetarily and very, very exponentially, the bottom line is all of that came crashing down. And to me, that's what she's dealing with. Don't tell me that a loss is affecting Ronda Rousey and it's just a loss. If you train as much as she has trained and you are as gifted as she is, somewhere along the way in your life, you lost at some point. It's the image that you created, how the outside world, how you manipulated them looking at you, and how that loss has now changed all of that. That's the problem to me. It's not that she lost, because we all understand anybody could lose in the octagon. Anybody could lose. I mean, listen, McGregor has lost. Nate Diaz got 11 losses on his career. John Bones Jones has lost. Everybody, people lose all of that. Unless your main name is Floyd Money Mayweather, you've lost. But in the end, what it comes down to is that if you are fending off the imagery that you created and how that has been sabotaged or destroyed, that, to me, is what she is dealing with right now. That is her battle.
I have something that might change your opinion. Obviously, I cannot wait to see a fight at Madison Square Garden. They fought so hard, the UFC, to get that ban lifted, so now we'll finally see that. And I wanted to see Ronda come back on that iconic card, but I did just get a text from someone in the UFC, and she is targeting to come back December or January, so I don't know if that kind of changes your stance in a sense that if it's health, and she couldn't come for this particular card, but she will be back the following month. In December, they have 2 cards already planned for December 10th and 30th. She's not hiding out.
This is not a funny thing, and we in no way are trying to come across as somebody like when Ronda Rousey lost, I was hurt for her. Holly Holm seemed to be a really, really sweet and nice lady, but the bottom line is that you couldn't help but feel sorry for Ronda Rousey, especially when you saw her on Ellen DeGeneres' show talking about how she didn't even want to live. This is serious, serious stuff, but it doesn't come across, rather, as it being, Max, because she lost the fight. Well, it's because of everything surrounding it.
I think also the pressure for her to come back against not only a world-class fighter, but the woman at the time who had just beaten her. And even now, the idea, now she's been out of the ring for a year, out of the octagon for a year, is she supposed to come back against a cream puff? Which actually is the right idea. I mean, throughout the boxing history, that's usually how it works if you get knocked out. No, there's pressure on her to come back against a top-flight, world-class fighter. I think, without knowing it for sure, but in my experience, being around the fight game and seeing how fighters respond to losses, that added pressure to fight someone like that could have something to do with the extended absence. I want to say this, too, about Ronda Rousey, because you brought up women fighting. The fact that it occurred to me when she lost, that any human being or any fighter, anyone really, loses something and the world stops spinning on its axis, tells you how important she became, how significant she became, particularly a female fighter. For a female fighter to lose a fight and Earth stops spinning because everyone pays attention to that, to her must have felt like the lowest low. She talked about intrusive suicidal thoughts and all that kind of stuff, and I get it. But from another point of view, and I'm sure eventually, I hope eventually, she could look at it this way, she became so great at what she did and so important at what she did that a loss for her meant the whole world noticed, and that is such a rare thing for anyone to ever accomplish.
Of course, because she was also built up to the highest of highs and surpassed all the men in terms of draw and becoming the biggest name in the sport. But I am excited if she does return in December or January potentially, and of course can't wait to see the UFC. I hope to be at that fight, that one in MSG November 12th. Coming up next, Friday, we got a new movie, Hands of Stone, and these stars are joining us next. Look who it is, Usher, Edgar Ramirez. Oh, they're facing off. They're ready to go. Can they battle Max and Stephen A? All love. They're joining us at the desk. That's next. What's up, guys?
Right.
Come on over. Thank you. I got plans for this weekend. Joining us now are the stars of the new film Hands of Stone, in theaters this Friday. Thrilled to be joined by Golden Globe-nominated actor Edgar Ramirez, who plays Roberto Hands of Stone Duran, 8-time Grammy Award winner Usher Raymond IV, who plays, of course, the icon Sugar Ray Leonard. You guys, thanks so much for being here.
Oh.
We so appreciate you making the trip up.
You guys don't have any idea how incredible it is to actually be here with you. First and foremost, Max, thank you, man. You're doing a great job since Skip is gone.
Thank you, brother.
I tell you, man, amazing. And you know, I don't have to ever tell you. Yo, of course, first of all, let's just look at your attire right now.
Thank you so much.
Killing it. Okay, got that out of the way.
Awesome. Thank you, guys, again. Usher, I want to start with you. What newfound respect do you have for boxers after playing this role?
Well, understanding the psychological aspect of it is one thing that became painfully obvious. You know, you just have an ultimate respect for, one, the fact that they have to lose that weight, go in front of an entire audience of people who are screaming and hollering, and then still remain focused within a fight. And an opponent's in front of you trying to tear your damn head off. You know, it's like, I don't think, I mean, acting that isn't something that I think I felt was the way to get to the role. I've been plagiarizing this since we started. He said this earlier. You know, you can play any sport you want. Golf, you can play basketball, baseball, football, but you can't play boxing. You have to physically go in there and understand it, and I did that. I had the opportunity to train with Ray. I trained in Atlanta. I trained and also to spar with amateurs in preparation for it, because I really wanted to know what it felt like to be under that type of pressure. You know?
And what was it like when you had a conversation with Ray, and he knew you would be portraying him in this film? What were the kind of things he said to you? What were the kind of feeling you got from, you know, just with him reacting to you?
There were a few steps that had to take place before I got
Like
there.
what?
So Jonathan reached out to me and gave me, you know, all of the reasons why he felt it would be a great opportunity for me to go for it if I was willing to do it. I wanted to talk to Ray. So I reached out to Ray and I made him aware that there was a, you know, boxing film being made about Roberto Duran, and they wanted me to play him. Would he, you know, condone it? He said, yes, it'd be an honor to have you do it. You know, I read his book. I read his book, The Big Fight, and it gave me a basis of how to approach him and asking questions leading up to that first fight, in between the second fight, and then the second fight. You know, but the story is, I mean, amazing. We were talking about it before we came out. This is a story that can educate you about the nature of boxing, and also to the reality, the heinous side, the dark side of boxing. But it tells an entire story from Duran's early times, early days, until his, you know, his success.
I got one for each of you. First, I know we've been directing a lot this way, but I got one for you in a second. We're coming this way in a second.
Coming this way.
So the hardest thing to do, I think, for an actor who's playing a famous character is to get it down so that people recognize the character, but not just do an imitation.
Right.
Do an interpretation.
Right.
A more experienced actor, you expect that from, but there I just watched you. I could see it was Sugar Ray Leonard, but it was an interpretation, not just like an imitation of Sugar Ray Leonard. How do you pull that off as an inexperienced actor?
Well, first and foremost, I had to get my inner Steven on. You know, I just seen you on General Hospital, so yeah. No, I'll do so.
Call him Brick.
The first thing is to train like a boxer. I said it. You know, you can't act this. You really have to. I mean, I had to lose the weight. I grew his hair, you know, and I studied his mannerisms. I began to look at him and analyze every aspect of who he was and what kind of led him to be the icon that he was, and then deal with the pressure of Duran. Duran was a monster, man. He was scary.
That's where I'm going. Right?
He was intimidating.
I had to go. I got to ask you this, because, I mean, everybody talks about Duran welterweight. I remember Duran getting knocked out by Tommy Hitman Hearns. I remember that.
Okay.
But before that, I remember him just destroying people. And he was as vicious as they come. I actually missed that in boxing to some degree in this day and age. But what was it like to play him? Talk to me about what you had to do to get ready for this role to be Roberto Duran, because that seemed to be something special.
Yeah, well, we're both very lucky that the champs trained us. I mean, I was trained by Roberto Duran in the same way that Sugar Ray Leonard trained Usher. I moved to Panama, and the whole process took probably over a year between all the training and the shooting. And Roberto was very open, and he was very generous to share a lot of time with me and to teach me the tricks and the technique. And he revealed a lot of things to me, but he also did not. And by not sharing everything with me, I learned more about him than had he opened completely up. Because one thing that I take away from this film is that boxers are like magicians. You know, they have tricks and they have cards under their sleeves that they will never reveal. It's like having a genie in a bottle, and that's part of the mystery. And I think that's why boxing is so fascinating still.
I want to peel, because you just finished saying that there were some things that he showed you a lot, but he didn't show you everything.
Yeah, no.
What did he keep from you? What did he keep from you?
Well, for example, I would ask him, why did you stop the fight? I mean, what happened that night in New Orleans? And he would never. I mean, every time I would ask him things straight, he would not shut up. He would keep talking, but he would take me somewhere else. I mean, he would just, you know.
He was partying too much leading up to the fight. He wasn't in shape to fight Sugar Ray in the rematch.
Well, the thing that is not. I mean, it's not as, and that's the fascinating part of the story. It's not as black and white as he was just partying and do. I mean, there's more to it.
Yeah,
and that's,
sure.
And that's the drama. I mean, just imagine that you come from nothing. Yeah. You've never had food on your plate, which is something very, very. Something that happens very often in the life of boxers.
Yeah.
It's a sport of them. It's
of course,
sport.
fighting your
so
way
you've
out.
never had. And one of the things that is one of the most dramatic things, and I learned this by spending all this time in Panama and training in the slums and going to El Chorrillo, where he comes from, is that one of the most dramatic things about being poor, it's feeling that you're no one, that you're a nobody. And this is a kid who never had food on his plate, and then suddenly he had, for the first time, all the money to buy all the food, and for the first time, all eyes are on him. That could be very overwhelming, and that is something that also, I mean, we can relate to that. I mean, people who are on the spotlight. I mean, it's something that actually the movie explores and would give great clues to all boxing fans out there on what the events and the things that went down and led to that fight.
I feel the need to chime in here because I was talking to Usher about this off the air before the show. I need either one of y'all to explain this to me. We see no mas.
Yeah.
Usher was talking about how it ain't that simple, Stephen A. It's not that simple. There's more to it than that. Yeah. Here's what I'm thinking is, Latino, you know, that hardcore heritage, fight, drop, you give up at no time. And that's exactly what Roberto Duran did. Whether he said the words no mas or not is irrelevant to me. The fact is, it's clear that that night he quit. What do y'all take from that?
He didn't quit. He said go to hell. That's different.
He said go to hell.
He said go to hell, but I'm not going to tell you.
Stop fighting.
Yo, but this is precisely the point. We're going to reinvigorate the conversation.
Yeah.
And you'll get a different perspective because now you're getting the full perspective. You get a chance to understand the reality. And I don't want to advocate specifically for Roberto Duran because I didn't play the Roberto Duran, but I can tell you.
Go ahead, you can.
But looking at the film, you really do get an understanding of how political this could be, how the business sometimes takes over, how you know the reality of who we are and how much we celebrate in our wins. That actually does play a part in it. In a way, being a debate about whether it was diuretics, and whether it was, he wasn't ready for the fight, whether he actually, got beat down by.
In a way, it was the ultimate.
Got in his head. It's all of that. It's actually a bit of all of it.
In a way, it was the ultimate tough guy move. In a way, I mean, you could see it's quitting, but you could interpret it as the ultimate tough guy move. Look, I don't have it tonight. I've been partying. This dude is psyching me out. He's embarrassing me. I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me on the canvas. Goodbye.
Yeah, but this is the thing. And this is why I really love.
You could interpret it that way.
Yeah, but Max, you haven't seen the film, and I think that you are gonna really enjoy.
Still,
you're gonna love the film because actually, all the clues to what you're saying. You
got Robert De Niro in the Roberto Duran movie? You think I'm not seeing this movie?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that it's way more complex, and this is something that we learned. I mean, this is the thing. Because we went through the process of becoming fighters, not professional fighters, but we fight. I mean, we had to become boxers in order to access and to understand these characters. And going through the pressure and the deprivation and the hardship and the struggle really changed us.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. I mean, it's very simplistic to say he was just tired because he was partying and he just felt bad. And he said, first of all, he didn't quit.
Right.
He said, go to hell, but not necessarily. This is as much as I'm going to say because I don't want to reveal.
Right.
I want people, this is a tease for you to go and see the
Yes.
film. It wasn't go to hell to his fellow athlete. It was
was
go
so
to
much
hell
more.
to a lot of
A
people.
lot of people. Well,
Well,
that's as much.
Here's the only thing I'm going to say. I can't wait until next week. We're definitely going to go watch the film.
All of us, yeah.
What I'm interested in seeing is what this man has to say once he watches the film, because this is boxing here. And so I know what I thought of No Mas. I've heard what you thought. I can't wait to see what you have to say in terms of your perspective once we watch this film. Because I want to see if this is going to change his mind.
Well, Max, I want to applaud you, man, because you're right. Boxing is not what it used to be.
No.
And part of it is the fact that this was a poor man's sport that has now become a glamorized rich man's sport. And where is the hunger? The hunger is in the pursuit of the proper match. But the wars that happened back in that time.
Know why you got him, though? Because the character you played.
I was getting ready to say that.
Was the money man.
That's
when
right.
the money man is like, just bring me the biggest, baddest dude for the most money. This is prize fighting. You get a great era. Yep. Muhammad Ali, get me Foreman, get me Frazier, get whoever's there. Sugar Ray Leonard, the glamour boy, the golden child, the gold medalist. He said, oh, Wilfred Benitez, Roberto Duran, he beat me. Get me right back in with Roberto Duran. Tommy Hearns was killing everybody. Marvin Hagler, get me the biggest, baddest dude. When you have the money man, Sugar Ray Leonard, with that attitude, you get a golden
Let me
age.
say the last comment.
Yep.
You're right. But Sugar Ray, nothing but respect, because I love me some Sugar Ray, in a complimentary way, is also somewhat to blame about the glamour. Because when you think glamour and boxing, who was more glamorous than Sugar Ray?
No. Sugar Ray Robinson?
No, I'm saying glamorous. I didn't say...
By the way, you know how big
Sugar Ray...
Glamorous.
Sugar Ray Robinson.
Because of the world we're living in. Come on now.
We weren't even there. But
Come
I'm
on
saying
now.
Sugar Ray
The word
Robinson...
entourage was made from Sugar Ray Robinson. By the way, Sugar Ray Leonard...
And an entrepreneur, too. In Harlem?
Yeah, talk about that.
No, Robinson was bigger than that. Robinson was bigger than that.
Well, by the way, you can't fault Sugar Ray Leonard.
I'm not faulting him for it.
No, because Sugar Ray Leonard also, too, changed the standard for African-American endorsement.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. I'm
By
just
the way,
saying.
I want to
but-
give
when I got them
I
thinking
want to
about
give you
money.
an idea
real
of how big
For
Sugar Ray
everybody.
Leonard was.
For everybody.
Yeah.
I want to give you an idea about how big Sugar Ray Leonard was. At the time, 1981, of the Leonard Hearns fight and right around the Duran fight, the highest paid athlete in the history of American team sports, by far, Dave Winfield, $2 million a year. Sugar Ray Leonard made over $10 million for fighting Roberto Duran,
Yeah.
That's
for
your
fighting
example.
Tommy
It was
Hearns.
That's your example. You know what my example is? When did we ever care about seeing a boxer with his own kid? But Sugar Ray and his kid, with a big smile, he knocking people out.
Yep.
But he's
Drinking
smiling
7
on
Up.
television.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about in terms of the glamour.
Yeah.
These
Well,
guys think about money. Sugar Ray taught him.
Well, he understood branding in the aspect
Sure.
of making sure that, the concept and the idea of what boxing was could evolve. Right? I mean, Oscar De La Hoya did the same thing.
That's right.
But my point is, for me, when I looked at this role, I was like, okay, what is it that I could go after that people don't know? And after reading his book, The Big Fight, you realize that there was a lot going on inside of Sugar Ray's head, but he wasn't showing it. There was a wall up because of the perception that he had for what he had, come in.
Edgar, look at this. Even in the Roberto Duran movie, Sugar Ray is overshadowing him.
No.
Look at this.
I told you off the air. You come up and come back. You know what? This is one of the most amazing contradictions of the story in the film. That that Sugar Ray presented himself before Duran, for when Duran came from, he was the rich kid.
Sure.
He was the rich kid.
Yeah.
He became this imperial power. He was the symbol
Sugar Ray
of
Leonard
this
was
country.
willing to
There was
accept that
also that
fight.
he felt that was occupying his country at the time.
Yes.
So that fight, I mean, the level, I mean, the number of layers that came into play in those two fights, it goes beyond boxing.
Gentlemen,
I mean, it was, as you say, it was a golden era when people were fighting for more than money.
Yeah, it wasn't
they were
nothing.
making a living,
Wasn't
but they were fighting for more than money.
Yeah.
Edgar, Usher, I hate to cut you guys off. We could talk to you all day
Can't wait to
long,
see
but
the
we
movie.
do.
I mean, I can't
Gotta
wait.
get to the commercial
Well,
break.
this is a great
We
cause to
cannot
go
wait.
see the movie.
Yeah,
Right?
we were already
2
excited.
days.
This took it another level. Edgar,
Settle it in the
Usher,
ring.
appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for being here. We can't wait to check it out. Back in April, the Panthers offered Josh Norman a deal under the non-exclusive franchise tag. Then after contract discussions pulled the offer, resulting in Norman becoming a free agent. Norman then signed a 5-year, $75 million contract with the Washington Redskins. Norman was tied for 5th in the league in pass breakups last season. Norman, of course, has been very outspoken this offseason, taking on Roger Goodell, the Redskins' name, Odell Beckham, Demaryius Thomas, and even taking shots at his former team. So we welcome Damian Woody to the desk. Now, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Are you going to start trouble today? Because I'm hoping you get this man hot again.
No, I just speak truth.
Yeah, you've been on fire.
That's all I do.
The last few times we've had you.
Call him the eye of the hurricane.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything's calm. It looks pretty good. And then, whoa, is a storm.
Bam.
I just call it like I see it, bro.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, we're going to have you do that on this subject right here. Were the Panthers right, Damian, to let Norman go?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they're right. And here's why. You know, when you look at the Panthers' defense, they're built on their front seven. You know, they got ballers in their front seven, whether Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, K1 Short, Starla Tulele. Those boys ball, which allows guys like Josh Norman to do his thing on the back end. They play zone. They're a zone defense. They're not, you know, Josh Norman's not the type of, you know, corner that locks down a guy man-to-man, follows the receiver all over the field. He plays zone defense. So when you're the Carolina Panthers, why spend quarterback money on a guy who's just going to play on one side of the field, playing in an area, not locking people man-to-man? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I disagree with you. No surprise there. Here is why. I don't think that was their motivation. I would totally agree with you if it was just about football. I don't think it was just about football. I think that initially, if you remember, they had an offer on the table with him. They got upset because he was playing hardball because he thought he was worth more than they were offering. And then as a result of that, they pulled the offer off the table to a point where I was told at the time that he was actually close to being willing to accept that offer before they yanked the rug out from under him. That was my issue with the Carolina Panthers in terms of what they did. You're absolutely right. The strength of their defense is their front center, particularly with their linebackers, Kuechly and Thomas. We all know that, and we know that gives your corners room to operate, particularly in a zone scheme. He goes to Washington now. The secondary is like opposite Carolina. That front seven is big time in Carolina, but in Washington, it's your secondary with Breland and Norman that's supposed to do so much damage that it'll give you time to get at the quarterback. I guess what I'm saying to you is this. Josh Norman, mouth and all, because they're talking about how he's got so much freedom now because in Washington and Jay Gruden ain't tripping over the way that Carolina might have tripped in terms of silencing you and making sure that you say the right things. I think we need to be careful about that. In North Carolina, I went to school down at Winston-Salem State. That's the Bible Belt, bro. You know what I'm saying? It's not about people wanting to silence you or whatever. It's the Bible Belt. The rules are just a tad bit different, you know, down south as they are up north of the nation's capital. Now, if it were me and I was saying that, I understand. I mean, to me, it's more plausible. But Josh Norman is from Greenwood, South Carolina. He went to school at Coastal Carolina, and then he played for the Panthers. I mean, you should be very, very familiar with how things are done down there. So it's really not an organizational thing as much as it is about them being a Bible Belt, and there's a certain way they want players to ingratiate themselves with that community out there. But the flip side to it is that you're the Carolina Panthers. You just came off a Super Bowl appearance. He was widely considered the third best player on their team, arguably their second best player on defense, even though I would say third because I'm looking at Thomas and Kuechly together. Right. And I just say to myself, to me, you try to keep a good thing together. That's all I'm trying to say. If you lost before the Super Bowl, it's different, but you try to keep a good thing together.
Here's why the big guy is right. Because it is quarterback money per year, essentially, that he's looking for, that they offered in terms of what they
quarterback money is more than
basically that. It's like, you know, $14 million, I think, something like. It's a lot of money to pay a guy who's not really a shutdown corner per se. And in terms of his own feelings, and he said this, you know, like deals that were coming his way that the Panthers didn't want him to see because they were all about promoting Cam and Kuechly. And I really do. I mean, I hate him now because he's on Washington. I'm a Giants fan, but I really do like Josh Norman because of how competitive he is. But this idea that he's upset about that because they wanted to pump up those two guys. Cam Newton might be the best football player in the world, and Kuechly is a better defensive. He has more defensive value than Norman. I mean, Kuechly is in the conversation for best defensive football players in the world. So if you're third best, and you're right, when you bring up maybe the fourth best, They're not going to pump you up on a team that, as you mentioned, the geographical location plus the kind of team philosophy is we don't do that kind of talking like they may be more permissive of it in D.C. But if you're the third best guy at best, why are they pushing you like you're the best guy? I get that.
So let me get back to what you were saying just a minute ago. So you're basically saying because he's an outgoing personality that was, in your opinion, the reason that they decided to rescind the franchise tag and let him walk.
No, I'm saying that when they originally had the offer on the table and then they yanked it out from under him, if you had never decided to make him that offer, that would be different. But because you decided to make him an offer and he wanted to negotiate a better deal for himself, you were like, bump it, we're going to move in a different direction. That's the impression that they gave. Because when I spoke to him, and I spoke to him directly in the immediate aftermath of Carolina rescinding the offer that they had given to him, it was a shock to him. If you remember, at the particular moment in time, his agent would presumably drop the ball, per se, and all of that stuff came into the mix. So what it reeked of to me was an organization that was basically trying to strong-arm you and say, there's a certain way we want you to act during negotiations, otherwise we're going to rescind that offer. And that kind of ticked me off because I'm looking at it from the standpoint of Damian Woody is an important cog to a Super Bowl contending wheel. You're fresh off a Super Bowl appearance. You've seen Richard Sherman get his money. You've seen Patrick Peterson get his money. You've seen Darrelle Reeves get his money. And then your time shows up and you're universally recognized as one of the top 5 quarters in the game. It shouldn't be an issue with you asking for what the market potentially allows. And that was the impression that was given by the Carolina Panthers. And I had a problem with that because I feel as a player, if the market allows you to challenge that you're worth X amount of dollars, you should be able to try and negotiate that as opposed to having the rug stripped from under you, figuratively speaking, just because there's a way we do business and we don't like it. Similar to Antonio Brown. Yeah, the Steelers want to wait, but he's Antonio Brown. He's the best receiver in football. I got a real problem with the fact that the Steelers don't want to talk to him, and they're holding hard and fast to some rule about only in the last year of your contracts, but we'll make exceptions for the quarterback. But you ain't going to make exceptions for the best wide receiver in football. I got a problem with that.
Well, here's the deal. We see things differently because I see it as Carolina obviously puts a certain value on a position that they feel like on their defense and their scheme that they can plug and play guys in.
But then why make the initial offer is what I'm saying. Well,
listen, any organization is going to try to keep a really good player, but they're not going to go overboard to try to pay a guy who they clearly feel is not the elite type of player, guy who's more of a system guy. And on top of that, they still have to pay K'Wan Short their stud defensive tackle, a position that they favor more.
You're right, but what I'm asking you, Damian, is this. You make the offer.
Right.
Doesn't he deserve the right to turn it down? You didn't even give him that. He woke up one day and you took the offer off the table. There's a difference between that. Hold on. There's a difference between that and saying, this is our final offer, take it or leave it. They didn't do that. What they did, he woke up one morning and, wait a minute, I was thinking about taking this offer, and now you're telling me it's no longer there. We've moved on. There's something wrong with that picture. You wouldn't agree with that as a former player?
That's just the way business is done. We know the NFL is a cold world. It's a cold business.
That's not what I asked you, David.
I understand the business side. I've seen many type of deals like that happening in the National Football League. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that from owners.
So you've seen a team
like that.
So you've seen a team not give you a chance to accept or reject their final offer?
I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about other players. Yes, I have. I have. Yes,
okay, well, that's new to me.
Yeah, I have.
I didn't know that. That I didn't know.
Gentlemen, let's end that conversation there because there's more debates we want to get into and have time for. Damian, you're going to stick around, which we appreciate.
Is he?
He is. He's staying put for the rest of the show, Steve.
Yeah, he's scared of you,
man. If we're lucky, he's
sticking around. Coming up, the Eagles.
You've been sitting behind the little screen right now.
Gentlemen, I'm trying to read the bomb. Put all the chips in to get Wentz, and did the Eagles make a mistake? We'll dissect that move when we come back. Prediction by Jason Lockenfor of CBSSports.com. The Eagles' first-round draft pick, quarterback Carson Wentz, may not play at all this regular season, saying this might be a redshirt year for him. Now, let's just take a look at just what the Eagles gave up to get Wentz because they put all those chips in. In April, they traded with the Browns to get the number 2 overall pick in the draft, which they used on Wentz. They also got a conditional 4th-round pick in 2017. Philly gave up the number 8 overall pick, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick in April's draft. Philly also gave them their 2017 1st-round pick and a 2nd-rounder in 2018. That was a lot, Max. That was a laundry list of things to trade. Did the Eagles make a mistake?
Obviously, at the time they made the trade, they made a mistake. I think the Rams also made a mistake. But let's focus on Carson Wentz, because in this case, the Eagles gave all that up, and you mentioned, I don't have to go through it again, you know, 1st-round pick, next year, 1st-round pick, year after that, a 2nd-round pick, to get a guy whoever the Rams weren't going to take. They didn't even have their choice. And when you look at Carson Wentz, who kind of fits the prototype physically, and the scouts like what they see and everything, but when you actually look at the numbers, like Goff was better dropping back under pressure. Wentz was not very good at some of those indications of how he's going to play on the next level. But okay, maybe over time he could develop. Look, every draft, you can always point to a quarterback taken later in the draft. This guy was taken in the 4th round. You didn't have to. But in this case in particular, you don't give up all that stuff unless you feel like this is a generational talent, or at least a once-in-a-several-years kind of player. Carson Wentz is a typical one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the draft. Those guys are there every single year. Forget about Paxton Lynch, who went 26, didn't have to do anything to get him. How about the fact that Dak Prescott was the 135th overall pick? Who would you take right now, Wentz or Prescott, just based on what you've seen in the preseason from Dak? I mean, so you're trading all of that for a guy who you didn't get to choose. It was whoever the Rams didn't take, who's not a kind of once-in-a-several drafts kind of talent, and you can't even claim you thought he was because you didn't know for sure who the Rams were going to take when you made the trade. You were just, I would just kind of need a quarterback. And where you could have gotten a guy who, at least at this very early moment, I agree, but at this moment looks better than him 100-and-something picks later. Now the guy is hurt, and he's going to redshirt his first year. How is that not a bad trade? In what universe is that not a bad trade?
In the universe where they say that preseason doesn't mean a damn thing, which, as I recall, Max Kellerman said about a week ago. That's the world that you say that in. That's number one. Number two, you have to look at it from this perspective. When we think about Carson Wentz, we have to think about the fact that he had one preseason game, suffered the rib injury. Now, we repeatedly say, excuse me, no matter what kind of quarterback you are, it's important to get the quarterback first. You have to surround them with the talent later. But at the same time, with what the Eagles gave up, one can make the argument that, okay, 4th-round pick, 1st-round pick, years from now, et cetera, you know, the 4th-round pick turned into Connor Cook. Dak Prescott got picked 135th overall. We get all of that. So after a couple of preseason games, you can make that claim. But if you're the Eagles, think about what they had here. You got Sam Bradford, not much else. Mark Sanchez, thank the good Lord, he went to Denver. So you don't have to worry about him in Philadelphia anymore. Now you have a quarterback. Granted, he played in the FCS, which is the equivalent of Division II. Didn't play in the FBS. Also, didn't even play a mid-major teams in the FBS, for crying out loud. You're a Division II guy. But the flip side to it is this. Every year you played, you ended up a champion. You're accustomed to pressure. You were a man amongst boys, they said, when you played against what is considered to be inferior competition. All the necessary tools are supposedly there. 6'5", 233, with a strong arm, who has wheels, has a motor, has mobility. This is what they say. I haven't watched him much. I only saw the highlights of him. I don't know. I was not watching North Dakota State. I apologize. But damn it, let me take it back. I'm not apologizing. I got better things to do with my time than watch North Dakota State. No disrespect. I'm sure it's a good program, but if I'm got a chance to watch Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Florida State, Oklahoma, somebody, I'm kind of going to pick them rather than North Dakota State. So I didn't see much of Carson Wentz. But based on what they tell me, and based on what you all describe, as you look for and you need in a quarterback, I think the jury is still out, and I think that there's no reason whatsoever to believe that the Eagles have made a mistake yet. Whether or not that remains to be seen, we'll find out.
Who's right,
but
David?
Right now,
who's right?
No reason.
Man, I cannot believe I'm about to do this. Man, I'm about to go with Stephen A. on this one.
I can't believe it either.
It's
That's
hurting
a bad
me
decision.
It's hurting me right now, but I gotta roll. I gotta roll with.
You usually agree
I know. I gotta roll with Stephen A. Here's why. Traditionally, the way you get your franchise quarterback is in the first round. You know, I know people talk about Tom Brady or Russell Wilson, but those guys are outliers. You don't really get franchise quarterbacks in the third, fourth or sixth rounds. You usually get them in the first round. So I understand the reasoning why the Eagles decided to trade all those picks to go up and get a guy who they feel like could be their franchise quarterback for 10 plus years. And also, when did it become such a detriment to sit a guy on the bench and just let him learn a little bit? I mean, Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. I mean, we used to see that all the time. But now in today's NFL, we just want to just throw the guys out to the wolves and just
because of Cam and Luck, we all think that the rookies should be good.
But not everybody coming in is Cam and Luck.
But let me say,
some of these guys, they need to sit down and just mentally and just take a redshirt year and just learn the game.
I got no beef with that, but if you need a quarterback,
right,
and Goff and Wentz. First of all, you don't know you're getting Wentz. So everything you just said about Wentz, why he's a champion, they didn't know they were getting him. So were they hoping they were getting him, or were they hoping that they were getting Goff? Who knows? The Eagles, when they made the trade, because the Rams were picking first, unless you had definite knowledge who the Rams were taking, you don't even know you're getting. Secondly, a guy like that is available every year. I mean, like, to just say, oh, we just needed a first-round quarterback or high up in the first round, he's not like some transcendent talent according to anyone.
But that's not the point, because we all know, and when it comes to the NFL draft, quarterbacks oftentimes they get what's the word I want? They get higher ratings. People want them more because they're quarterbacks. But
so don't pay a high price.
So as the Eagles, you can't just sit back at number 8 at number 8 and just say, oh, we're just going to let a quarterback fall.
Are the Eagles going to be good this year?
No.
Then think about what that first-round pick is going to look like for Cleveland next year. Are they going to be good the year after that? Because they got a second-round pick they traded for him in addition to everything this year.
You had the 8th pick. You moved up to number 2. Okay, you gave up a couple of second-round picks. You gave up a second-round pick, and you gave up a third and a fourth, and you separated amongst years. There's 7 rounds for crying out loud. Look, it's not that big of a deal. If Carson Wentz turns into a starting quarterback, you did good.
Okay.
A starting quarterback?
So Max says it's a mistake. Stephen A. says no, and you're on Team Smith here. Up next, we're going to ask you if you're on Team Norman or Team Thomas. I will explain. So Josh Norman talking trash aimed at Demaryius Thomas. Thomas responds. We'll tell you who's on next here on First Take.
We'll see how long that lasts.
So during this past Super Bowl, Josh Norman, who of course was with the Panthers, essentially got the best of Broncos receiver Demaryius Thomas. Thomas had 6 passes thrown in his direction, but caught only 1 for 8 yards. So Norman bragged about owning this matchup in a piece for ESPN the magazine on Newsstands Friday, saying, quote, I don't know what he was out there for. He was supposed to be an all-world guy, and I shut him down. Demaryius got wind of Norman's comments and tweeted a photo of his Super Bowl ring and directed a message to Norman, writing, check this out. Where yours at, young fella? Max?
Yeah.
Do you like, love, or hate Demaryius' response?
I love Demaryius' response. First of all, Norman is, of course, there are corner wide-out matchups, but as Damian pointed out earlier, that's not exactly the way Carolina was playing. Secondly, as one guy on a team that hasn't done anything yet, that was just playing on a team that lost to the team that won the Super Bowl, is making it about his one-on-one matchup with the other star, in this case, the wideout, Demaryius Thomas. That guy who played on the winning team, his response is really all about the team, like, okay, say whatever you want to say. I'm not even going to deal with whether or not it's true. Don't argue. A wise man once told me, don't argue with fools because people from a distance can't tell who is who.
Love that quote.
Quote Jay-Z a lot on this show.
That.
But what he does is just tweet back the ultimate team response. Hey, young fella, I got one of these. You make it about you and me. I'll make it about this. I love that response.
Damian?
Man, revenge is served best cold. So what better way to clap back at somebody who's talking reckless, who's talking crazy, than by flossing that hardware online or right in their face? Like, you need to get in this club before you talk to me, bro. Literally, like you can't even have discussions. You can't even talk to me directly. You're not even in this fraternity right now. I got something that you don't even have. You might not ever get. So the fact that Josh Norman is even talking about, one catch or whatever for 8 yards, what difference does that make? You don't have the ice. You don't have the ring.
There's levels.
Bro, sit
As
down
Max loves to
somewhere.
say.
Go check your bank account because you got paid well. You eating good in Washington. But for you to come at somebody who just beat you in the Super Bowl, come on, man.
Yeah, where's your chip? No, I love it. I'm with you, but I want to hear Stephen A's response.
Yeah, be wrong about this one.
Nope, you got to stay tuned for that quick break. Stephen A will respond, and you might be surprised by that when we return.
First Take is brought to you by Exxon and Mobil. Refuel with new Synergy gasoline from Exxon and Mobil. Energy lives here.
So quick recap in case you're just joining us here. Earlier, we were discussing Josh Norman. He's been talking a lot. He said that he owned Demaryius Thomas, 8 passes thrown his way during the Super Bowl. He caught only 1. We heard both of your responses. So Demaryius responded on Twitter with a shot of his Super Bowl ring saying, "Where's yours, young fella?" And we heard both Damian and Max saying that they're good with it. Stephen A., we haven't heard your response, though. Do you like, love, or hate that response by Thomas?
I hated it. I get where my man Damian Woody's coming from. I mean, he would know something about Super Bowl championships, nothing but respect for that. I get where you're coming from. I'll have a comment about that another day. Here's the thing about Demaryius Thomas.
You hate it.
I hate it, and here's why. Because even though it is a team game, individual exploits do matter. And when you haven't done your job, I got an issue with you. Divisional playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Demaryius Thomas, you know, the $70 million man, Demaryius Thomas, had 4 receptions for 40 yards. The AFC Championship game, okay? What did Demaryius Thomas have? 2 receptions for 12 yards. And in that Super Bowl game against Josh Norman, you had 1 reception for 8 yards. Now, I have no problem. I want you to be mindful of opening your mouth if you're Josh Norman, particularly when you're calling the commissioner names, particularly when you're calling out to Morris Smith for the NFLPA, particularly when you haven't produced and watched it yet. I have no doubt he will produce. I have no doubt he's big time. He's one of the top 5 corners in the game. He's a good brother. I just wish him well. But I want him to watch himself. In the case of Demaryius Thomas, who's had 4 consecutive 1,300-plus yard seasons, and deserved his money when he got it. We all talk about prime time now. And I ain't talking about Deion Sanders here, even though there's a reason he's prime time. I mean, Deion Sanders was so prime time, we don't even need to talk about him in the daytime. That's how prime time he was, okay? Because he showed up when it was time. And Damian, you can appreciate the fact that you're supposed to show up when it's time. Yeah. Demaryius Thomas had 40, 12, and 8 yards in 3 playoff games.
Who's throwing
that
the
came
ball?
to stop it.
The remains of Peyton Manning.
Did I finish?
Brock Osweiler?
Did I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Zip it. I did not. I zipped it. I sat in. I kept my mouth shut. Okay, it's my turn. Here's the deal. In 3 games combined with the money on the line, the man had 60 yards. 60 in 3 games combined. Now, I understand that Peyton Manning wasn't Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning looked pretty decent against Pittsburgh.
Oh.
Peyton Manning, at times, and listen, I'm not making a case for him. I've been on Peyton Manning big time. It was time for him to retire. But at least a half for one game, a half for another game. I mean, a quarter for one game. Peyton Manning was there. I'm just saying, 60 yards in 3 games, fresh off of $70 million. And the dude that talked about you were targeted 6 times, caught the ball once for 8 yards in the Super Bowl, and you going like this? Really? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I'm just saying.
Peyton Manning passed away before the playoffs started. People forgot to tell him.
I'm just saying.
He wasn't even there.
You know what I'm saying? Let me tell you what I'm really trying to say. Let me tell you what I'm really trying to say. We've been talking about the great receivers. We had that discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
We brought up top 5 receivers. Did we mention Demaryius Thomas? That's all I'm saying. We talked about guys, we were debating, because the Madden football, Damian, we talked about Odell Beckham Jr., we mentioned Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Des Bryant, we even mentioned A.J. Green and a couple of, we even threw in the name Alshon Jeffrey. All I'm trying to say is this. We didn't bring up Demaryius Thomas. He got $70 million. All I'm trying to say is, I get that, because he does have the ring, but you got to show up this year is all a brother trying to say. Am I wrong about that, Damian? Am I wrong about that?
Now we got Mark.
Am I wrong about that, Damian? Damian, am I wrong about that? Am I wrong? Hold on. Let me ask a question. Am I wrong about that?
No, listen. No, you're not wrong about that aspect. He does need to show up. But all the receivers you pretty much brought up. I mean, let's pair up the quarterback with those receivers.
I understand that.
Let's
Can I
pair
ask
up
you a
the
question?
quarterback.
Can I ask you a question?
Okay.
Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr. They getting one catch for 8 yards in the Super Bowl? Yes or no? I don't care if I'm throwing a damn football. Are they getting one reception for 8 yards?
No.
In the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think so.
Hey,
No, I don't.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying.
That's all I'm saying.
One reception for 8
I'm
yards.
just saying.
That
That's what I'm saying.
response was so clutch.
I'm just saying the clap back
Stephen
was.
A.
was
He
everything.
shut him down.
The clap back was everything.
The show is ending. Damian Woody, did you not just say you agree with me? Yes or no?
No, I'm not gonna go there.
Yes, you did. Yeah, you did. I know it hurts.
No, because you're trying to.
I know it hurts. I know it hurts.
You're trying to reel me in.
I did already.
I agree with you one time. I can't.
I did already. Yeah, that's emotion talking. That's emotion talking.
The question was, did you like the way? Did you love it?
I hate it.
Approve of your message. Demarius, I loved it. It's 3 versus 1. We all loved it.
Y'all can sit there and love it all you want to. All three of y'all wrong.
Out, sweetheart.
And we know he agreed with me. We really do.
Same time.